Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. There are plenty of fascinating storylines for this USC program going into the next couple of weeks and months. We've talked a lot about this USC program on the recruiting trail. We will continue to talk about this team on the recruiting trail. One of the other fascinating storylines is hey, we're kicking off spring practice, and not only is there a lot of change, there are a lot of new players. I'm talking about some new players who are coming in as early enrollee true freshmen that I think have the opportunity to emerge as difference makers for USC going into 2025. Now, who are the freshmen that I'm keeping my eyes on the most as we enter into spring practice? That's what I want to talk about now. Before we get into it, as always, to the USC fans, y'all let it fly in the comment section. There, at least from what I've seen, there's just not many fan bases that follow the recruiting trail as much as the USC fans do. And so I'm sure all of y'all who are listening to this have some names that you are excited to monitor as we go into spring practice. I'm only going to talk about five. And so for y'all in the comment section, let it fly in terms of names you are most excited about going into spring ball. To the USC fans who've been rocking with the fellas the last couple of weeks and months, y'all know I've had a blast talking this team, and the amount of support that y'all have shown the fellas has been amazing. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it, and let's start with the low hanging fruit here. That is defensive lineman Jahkeem Stewart. I think this is probably the freshman that most USC fans are most excited about. Look, for good reason. This kid is a reclassified kid that should currently be a junior year in high school, and he's with this USC program going into his freshman year of college. Very rarely do we talk about freshmen having a year one impact, especially when they're reclassified. Well, Jahkeem Stewart's a rare cat. At 6'6", 250, or 290, excuse me, Jahkeem Stewart is a guy that possesses elite pass rush ability. That was the thing we liked most about him coming out of high school. And I think that's the asset that he provides USC the most immediately as a freshman, where you look at USC, this is arguably the biggest storyline for this USC defense is can we get better rushing the passer with our front four? USC only sacked the quarterback 4% of the time in the 2024 year. You need more difference makers who can get after the passer. Jahkeem Stewart is one of those guys. There's just not a lot of interior offensive linemen that are going to be able to deal with the length and the athleticism that Jahkeem Stewart has. And, a lot of people are talking about this USC defensive line. You have guys like Keyshawn Silver, Jamal Jarrett coming in through the transfer portal. To me, those are your big body run stoppers. On those 1st and 10, second and short downs, those obvious run stopping downs, you're probably going to see a lot of Jamal Jarrett, a lot of Keyshawn Silver. Good. That's what they're best at. When you're seeing those 3rd and long situations, you trot on a guy like Jahkeem Stewart, who I think has the highest upside as a pass rusher of that interior defensive line group. I think he can be a problem. And this is one of my favorite parts about how this defensive line is built for USC, where you have bodies that can do one thing. You have other bodies. You're really versatile. Talk about Kobe Pepe, who's up to 335. Jamal Jarrett, I believe, is going 350. Keyshawn Silver going 340. You got some big bodies that can stop the run on 1st and 2nd down. And then when it gets into those 3rd and long situations and USC is looking for difference makers who can get after the passer, Jahkeem Stewart, G.J. Abasiri, a guy like Devin Tompkins, you have your run stoppers, you have your pass rushers, and I think Jahkeem Stewart is probably going to specialize in some of those 2nd and 3rd and long spots where he can pin his ears back and get after the quarterback. He's a penetrator. That's what he does. That's the biggest thing that USC is looking for is some juice from the pass rush, specifically with this front four. I think Jahkeem Stewart can be that guy. I mean, you go back to last year, Cam Fountain emerged as probably the best pass rusher on this football team off the edge in the 2024 year. Can Jahkeem Stewart be that guy for USC in 2025 on the inside of the defensive line? Massive storyline. Number 2, Husan Longstreet, another really popular name. And I know there's a lot of USC fans that don't necessarily think it's a quarterback battle and think Jaden's the guy going into 2025. And that's probably where we sit right now. There's no doubt about it. Do not count out Husan Longstreet in this quarterback battle going into spring practice. To me, what fascinates me the most is you have Jaden, Husan Longstreet, both of which offer immense upside in terms of the physical traits they bring to the table, way higher than a guy like Miller Moss did last year. It's going to come down to what quarterback can consistently command this offense going into 2025. Now, Jaden, we saw some really good things from him towards the end of the season, but we also did not see a ton of consistency, not a ton of great decision making. Jaden has the lead. There's no doubt about it going into spring practice. The first quarterback taking the 1 reps will be Jaden. But I think Husan Longstreet's going to get a shot. And he's a guy that, from what Lincoln Riley looks for at the quarterback position, Husan Longstreet is that kind of quarterback. And that's not really how we talked about Miller Moss going into 2024. We were all confident with Miller Moss, but he needed some things around him to really click. And especially in the beginning of the season with the offensive line, it didn't. You have a guy in Husan Longstreet where, because of what he can do throwing off platform, because of what he can do as an athlete, and don't let that baby face like fool you. This kid is a put together freshman quarterback. He's a guy that can play a little bit off script. And those are the quarterbacks that Lincoln Riley has had the most success with over his years of coaching quarterbacks. I'm really excited to hear and at the end of the day, it's kind of the iron sharpens iron conversation where you want somebody to come in and push Jaden for that quarterback 1 spot. And I think Husan Longstreet can be that guy. Number 3, in kind of one of my favorite USC additions in that 2025 class, Alex Graham. Now, as a Michigan guy, he's from Detroit, Michigan. Michigan was after him hard too. Wouldn't have minded him coming up to Michigan. What I love most about Alex Graham is he spent a lot of time as kind of a middle-of-the-road 3-star as a recruit coming out of high school. Did not get a ton of buzz on the recruiting trail because he spent a lot of his early high school years banged up. Went to IMG Academy for a year, wasn't all that healthy, didn't get on the football field a ton, came back to Detroit, Michigan, Cass Tech his senior year, and was freaking awesome. Now, what fascinates me the most about Alex Graham, am I plugging and playing him as a starter immediately? No, probably not. USC's looking for depth in the back end. I mean, the amount of seniors that USC is losing going into 2025, the door is wide open for some young cats to really emerge in the 2 deep for USC in the secondary. And depth, it's not always the most fun conversation to have in spring practice, but it matters. I mean, you look at all the programs that are winning conference championships, winning national championships. If you want to be an elite team in college football, you have to have a really good 2 deep. There's some opportunity for some young cats to really crack that 2 deep in this USC secondary. Alex Graham's one of those I think can do it. And why do I think Alex Graham can do it? Because I think he can play every single position in the back end. He can play boundary cornerback. He can play that nickel role. He can play safety. He's probably going to start at safety for USC. And what intrigues me the most about that is the dude's got a ton of experience playing man coverage. I mean, go back to last year when you had to ask a guy like Achille Arnold or Bryson Shaw to hold up in man coverage. They just could not. Alex Graham's one of those safeties that he can do it. And so if Dan Lynn wants to get creative with some of those blitz packages and ask these safeties to hold up in man coverage, Alex Graham's a guy that, with all the experience he has playing cornerback, can probably, hold up in man coverage from that safety spot. He also can spend some time in the box, maybe as a nickel defender, and get supportive in the run game too. He's put on some nice weight, 6 foot, 195 going into spring practice. He's another guy I'm looking for. Number 4, and another question we have for USC, and that is, hey, who's going to be wide receiver 3? We know who our top 2 wide receivers are, and Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane. That wide receiver 3 spot is wide open for USC going into spring practice. Jay Fair's a name. Xavier Jordan's a name. There are some names that you're looking to step up. Well, a name that we haven't talked a ton about that I think certainly could be a candidate is early enrollee true freshman Corey Sims from St. Louis, Missouri. When we broke down his commitment coming out of high school, we said 2 things. 1, he is physically ready to step on a college football field and play early. 6'3", 200 plus pounds, and he's a box checker. He's not a one-trick pony. I mean, you've seen some USC wide receivers as one-trick ponies. A guy like Zachariah Branch. Zachariah Branch, really, really fast, good with the football in his hands. That was kind of the extent of how you could use Zachariah Branch. A guy like Corey Sims, he's a big body that can work on the boundary, can work vertically, can go up and make some contested catches, but he's also a guy that can work the middle of the field and run some clean routes. He's a multidimensional wide receiver, a guy that you can use in a lot of different ways. And most importantly, he's physically ready to play college football with that size. I don't know if he's my lead candidate to win that wide receiver 3 spot, but he's certainly a guy that if you told me Corey Sims coming out of spring practice is a guy that will figure into the 2 deep, I wouldn't be all that surprised. And we know Lincoln Riley likes to rotate his wide receivers and get into his depth. I think you're going to see less of that this year because Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane are your guys. But you're going to see USC rotate some wide receivers. And I think Corey Sims could be in that rotation. Number 5, and this is a guy that I've completely changed my tune on, Alex Payne. Now, Alex Payne coming out of high school when he flipped his commitment and committed to USC, I said, okay, probably is going to need a year, right? Because when he committed to USC, he's 6'5", he's listed at 6'5", 265 pounds. All right, he needs a year to physically develop. Well, that development seems to have been – we made a lot of progress in the winter months in the weight room. He's up to 6'5", 295 pounds. Do I think Alex Payne starts for USC in the 2025 year? No, absolutely not. Elijah Page has the left tackle spot locked down. You have Tobias Raymond and Justin T kind of competing for that right tackle spot. What I'm looking at here is, hey, do we feel good about Alex Payne being in the 2 deep? Because one of the question marks we have about USC is the depth on the offensive line. That could be a position that USC might want to address in the spring transfer portal window. But a guy like Alex Payne has the opportunity to come in spring practice and say, hey, I can be in the 2 deep. And if you need me to start a game or two, I can give you quality work at the tackle position. He's a phenomenal athlete. It's all about him putting on the size and physicality to play at the collegiate level. We're off to a good start. And I'm excited to hear about what we hear from Alex Payne early in spring practice with this newfound size and physicality that he's put on during the winter workouts for USC. USC did a really good job with these freshmen in winter workouts. There's a lot of weight gain for the guys who needed to gain weight. They gained some weight, which you can't say for a lot of these other programs. And we're talking about Florida State, where they had guys losing weight coming into the program. USC did a really nice job with these freshman bodies, and I think that's where it starts. If you want to play as a freshman in college football, especially in the Big Ten, you got to have the right kind of body. And USC did a really nice job with some of these early enrollee freshmen, putting them in spots from a physical standpoint to potentially get into 2 deep and be a role player for USC in the 2025 year. And I get it. It's not always flashy to talk about the 2 deep. It's not always flashy to talk about the depth. Go ask Chad Bowden how that works for him at Notre Dame. He built a phenomenal 2-3 deep for Notre Dame. And Notre Dame dealt with a lot of injuries in the 2024 year and was able to make the national championship. USC wants to find depth. Alex Payne, I think, is a freshman that can provide USC depth immediately in the 2025 year. Those are my 5 freshmen. I left out my guy, Floyd Boucard, and I know some of y'all are going to grill me in the comment section. He is certainly a guy. Look, if USC didn't go out and get Jamal Jarrett, Keyshawn Silver, I probably would have put Floyd Boucard in there because he's a guy that I think can play early for USC. And he certainly looks the part from what I've seen in the weight room over the last couple of months. We'll see how it plays out. A lot of fun new faces to monitor for this USC program. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.